Hi everyone. An important part of building games is understanding the tools that you have available to you for making those games. You've played a bit with SpriteKit, working through the explorations 1 and 2, and in trying to build some of your own ideas on your own. What I'd like to do in this video is show you the specifics of how SpriteKit lets you build a game, build sprites, and also react to different events so that you get the gameplay that you're looking for as you build your game. The first one is the didMove function. This is the function that runs at the start of a SpriteKit game and sets up all of the sprites and their properties. So anything that you need to put a sprite on the screen and set its properties is going to happen within the didMove function. You'll want to look inside of the game scene for the didMove function so that you know where to put this code to build your game. It's important to know what the different options are for putting sprites on the screen. The first one that we've used in our game is the idea of a Sprite Node. And a Sprite Node actually uses an image to represent the sprite itself. You can see some of the sprites that I've used in my example games, and these have to be stored within your project file in order for it to be loaded into your game. Usually, you can create the sprite with a given image just by loading it with the name of the image file, as you can see up here. Sometimes you don't need an image texture. Sometimes you don't need an image at all. And this is where you can use just a shape node. That is another option within SpriteKit to put shapes onto the screen. We use this in one of the earlier playgrounds that we built together, and you can see both circles and rectangles on the screen in this example frame from one of the games that you built during the exploration the other day. There are a whole bunch of different shape nodes with different properties that you can use when you first create the sprites and put them on the screen. And both Swift Playgrounds and Xcode give you a whole list of all of these different kinds of shape nodes so that you can see what is available to you as you are building your sprites for your game. It's also possible to put text on the screen as a sprite, and you do this using an SK label node. And the example in some of the code that we put together was the score indicator. The key thing to remember about all of these different sprites is that after you create them and set different properties like size and color, you need to make sure that you add the sprite to the screen using the self.addChild function built into SpriteKit. Getting the sprites on the screen is one thing, but to actually build a game, you use different events that are part of SpriteKit. And there are a whole bunch of them, but the ones that I've included here are the ones that we're going to be using most often. These are touches began, touches moved, touches ended, did finish update, and did begin. It's useful to explain each of these events, so I'm going to do that right now. There are 3 kinds of touch events, and you can see all 3 of them in this video. When you first touch the screen, touches began runs. When you move your finger on the screen, that's touches moved. And when you release your finger from the screen, that calls the touches ended function. So you can see all 3 in this loop video. All 3 of these may be useful to you as you are building your game. And so you need to think about the kind of interactions that you're going to have with your user and how you want those interactions to control the sprites that are within your game. You use the touches began function when you want something to occur when you first touch the screen. And so in this playground that you may have played with before, you can see every time you touch the screen, the square moves to that location. That's done using the code that you see here on the screen right now. Touches moved is an event anytime you're moving your finger along the screen but have not actually lifted your finger up yet. So you can see the touches move function being used to move this square around the screen as the user is dragging their finger or the mouse while clicking around the game scene. Touches ended is an event that occurs when you actually pull your finger away from the screen. You can see that as we are moving the square around, it's following the mouse. But when you actually release it, the square goes back to the center of the scene. That moment of release is when the touches ended function is called. So if you want something to occur when a touch is ending, or a user has moved a finger off of the screen, that's the touch has ended function. Another useful function is the did finish update function. This is constantly running through your game. You can see here, the did finish update is running in a very fast loop. I'm just counting frames over and over and over again, and it goes really quickly. And so you might want to check and update scores. You might want to have a countdown timer to make it so that your user only has a certain amount of time to accomplish a task. All of these can be done within the did finish update loop because it is constantly checking for different conditions that you might want to use for controlling your gameplay. The last function that's relevant to us is the did begin function. And this occurs anytime there is a collision event between two sprites. In this scene in the game, we have a blue circle that is falling from the top, and there's a sprite all the way around the scene. When the falling ball actually makes contact with the edge of the scene, that calls the did begin function, and in my code here, that changes the label text to say that a contact has occurred. You would put your code inside of this function if you wanted it to run only when two sprites actually collide with each other. You want to think about all of these different functions as you think about what it is you want to actually make. You want to think about the sprites that you're going to need in your game, and also which events will give you the gameplay that you're looking to have for your user. Thinking about these things before you actually start coding can be really helpful so that you can be as efficient as possible during the coding process. I hope this helps as you build your games for this class. Have fun.